All right, we're about to dive into a global financial system that's worth trillions of dollars, but where charging interest is completely forbidden. A system where contracts with too much uncertainty are just void, and where every single transaction has to be tied to a real-world asset. This is the world of Islamic finance, and its core principles might really challenge how you think about money.
So let's just start with a huge question. What would a financial system without interest even look like? For most of us, that probably sounds impossible, right? But for this massive global industry, it's the fundamental reality. So how on earth does it work?
Well, to get it, you have to understand that this isn't just banking without the interest part. It's a whole system where every single transaction is guided by an ethical and legal framework called Sharia. And that framework, it creates a completely different set of rules for how money can be made and used.
So where do we start? Honestly, one of the best ways to get your head around this system is to look at what it prohibits. Instead of starting with what you can do, Islamic finance builds its foundation on what you can't do. And that creates a really clear framework for ethical business.
And it really boils down to three huge no-nos. You've got Riba, which is the ban on interest, Gharar, which forbids excessive uncertainty, and Maisir, the prohibition on gambling. These aren't just suggestions. They are the absolute pillars that shape every single financial product and transaction. So, let's break them down, one by one.
First up is the one you've probably heard of, the prohibition of riba. Now, most people just translate this as interest, but the real meaning, well, it's actually a lot broader and goes a lot deeper than that.
So here's the key idea. Riba is any predetermined, guaranteed extra money you get on a loan without taking on any real risk or providing a tangible good or service. The word itself literally means to increase, and it's all about making money from money, instead of making money from actual productive activity, like trade or investment.
And this isn't some modern idea. It's right there in Scripture. This verse from the Quran draws a really bright line. Trade is good to go, but riba is absolutely forbidden. Just think about what that means for a second. It completely re-engineers finance to favor partnership and shared risk over the simple lender-borrower relationship we see everywhere else.
Now, riba isn't just one thing. It's usually broken down into two main types. The first, riba on credit, is what we all think of as interest, that extra charge for paying a loan back late. But the second one, riba al-fadl, is all about fairness in immediate trades. It basically says you can't exchange unequal amounts of the same thing. For example, you can't trade 100 grams of wheat right now for 120 grams of the exact same wheat right back. It just ensures that like-for-like exchanges are always fair and equal.
Let's look at how this actually plays out. Check out the first two examples, lending $500 to get 600 back, or trading 3 gold bullions for 6. In both cases, the profit is totally disconnected from any real economic activity. That's riba. But now look at that third row. Selling a real asset like wheat for a fixed price that's going to be paid later, that's totally fine. And why is that? Because the transaction is based on a real tangible thing. That's considered legitimate trade.
All right, so we've got the ban on interest down. What's next? Well, now we have to talk about avoiding gharar. This concept is all about excessive uncertainty in contracts. It's a little more abstract than riba, but believe me, it is just as crucial to the whole system. So, Gharar is basically any major ambiguity in a contract that could lead to a big dispute down the road. You can think of it as a principle of absolute transparency. A classic example scholars use is the sale of a fish still in the water or a bird still in the air. Basically, you can't sell something when its existence or its quantity or its specific details are totally unknown. But, the system is also realistic. It gets that a little bit of uncertainty is just part of doing business. So there's a key distinction here. Minor uncertainty, or hadar yasir, is generally okay. It's the major, excessive uncertainty that's called gharar fahish. That's forbidden and can actually make a contract completely invalid.
So, what makes uncertainty major? Well, it usually comes down to a few key things. Either the asset you're selling doesn't even exist yet, or it's physically impossible to deliver, or its most important features are a complete mystery. The whole goal here is to make sure contracts are transparent and to protect people from being taken advantage of through deception or just plain ignorance.
And that brings us to our third and final big rule, Maisir, which is the prohibition against gambling and all games of chance. Maisir is all about getting rich purely by chance, in a situation where one person's gain is directly tied to another person's loss.
It's the very definition of a zero-sum game. And the critical issue here is that no new wealth is actually being created. Money is just being transferred from a loser to a winner without any productive work taking place at all.
And once again, you can see the deep ethical reasoning for this in Scripture. This verse links gambling directly to social harm, to creating enmity and hatred. The whole point is to build a cooperative society, and gambling is seen as something that fundamentally chips away at that goal. And this prohibition, it covers a huge range of activities. It includes ancient forms of chance-based sales, like something called Bay al-Hissat, which was literally a sale determined by tossing a pebble, and it extends all the way to modern lotteries, sports betting, and even some really complex financial products where the outcome is purely speculative. The core principle never changes. Wealth should be earned through effort and risk, not just won by chance. So, when you put all of these prohibitions together, Riba, Gharar, and Maisir, you start to see that they don't just apply to financial contracts. They actually extend to the goods and services themselves, with the goal of creating a completely ethical marketplace, from top to bottom. This means that Islamic financial institutions and businesses just plain avoid dealing with goods and services that are considered harmful or prohibited in Islam. This includes things like pork, alcohol, tobacco products, weapons, and a number of others.
And get this rule is incredibly comprehensive. It's not just about not selling these items at the very end. The prohibition applies to the entire supply chain. You can't be involved in producing them, packaging them, transporting them, or even marketing them. It is a complete end-to-end ethical screen on all commerce.
So when you really step back and look at the big picture, you see how all these pieces just fit together. The prohibitions on interest, uncertainty, and gambling aren't just some random list of rules. They all work together to build a financial ecosystem that is founded on fairness, on transparency, on shared risk, and, this is the most important part, on a direct, unbreakable link to the real, tangible economy.
And that leaves us with one final question to think about. In a world that's often dealing with debt crises, speculative bubbles, and a real disconnect between financial markets and the real economy, could these ancient principles of ethical finance offer any useful insights for our modern global system? It's definitely something to think about.